Imagine standing at the gates of heaven, your heart pounding, unsure if you've done enough to enter. Then a quiet, humble voice whispers, "It's not about what you've done. It's about how much love you've shown." This voice belongs to Saint Therese of Lisieux, the little flower of Jesus, a young woman whose life was a masterpiece of love, simplicity, and trust in God. Though she lived only 24 short years, her teachings have led millions to experience the joy of heaven, not just in the afterlife, but here on earth. Saint Therese's ultimate revelation isn't reserved for theologians or saints who perform miracles. It's for you, for me, and for anyone who longs to avoid the misery of separation from God. She discovered secret, a little way, a path so simple and yet so profound that it can transform the way you live and love, one small step at a time. But who was Therese? How did this sickly young woman, cloistered in a convent, leave a legacy powerful enough to guide souls to salvation? And what exactly is her little way, her ultimate key to avoiding hell and living in harmony with God's infinite love? Saint Therese of Lisieux was born on January 2nd, 1873, in the small French town of Alassa. From the outside, her life might have seemed ordinary. She was the youngest of 9 children, raised in a devout Catholic family. But beneath this simplicity lay a soul destined for greatness in the smallest of ways. Her childhood was marked by joy, but also by profound sorrow. When Therese was just 4 years old, she experienced her first great loss, the death of her mother, Zélie Martin. For a young child, losing a mother is a wound that cuts deep. This loss left her vulnerable, shy, and incredibly sensitive. Yet even in these early years, she began to show an extraordinary trust in God, a trust that would define her life. As she grew older, Therese faced more trials. Her father, Louis Martin, became her greatest earthly protector, but even his love couldn't shield her from illness and inner struggles. At the age of 10, she suffered a mysterious illness that doctors couldn't explain. Her recovery came through what she described as a miracle, attributed to the intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Imagine that, a child sick and helpless, experiencing the tender care of Our Lady in such a personal way. By the time she was 15, Therese had already decided what she wanted in life, to give herself completely to God. But even this wasn't without challenges. When she petitioned to enter the Carmelite convent at such a young age, her request was met with resistance. Most people would have given up, but not Therese. Her boldness took her all the way to Pope Leo XIII himself, where she pleaded for permission to join the convent. Her faith, determination, and trust in God's will eventually open the door. And so, at just 15 years old, she entered the Carmel of Lisieux, a small, hidden world where her great spiritual journey would truly begin. There were no grand stages or dramatic missions awaiting her. Instead, Therese embraced a quiet, cloistered life filled with prayer, work, and seemingly insignificant acts of love. But don't be fooled by this simplicity. It was in these humble moments that she began to lay the foundation for her little way, a spiritual path that would echo across the centuries. What's remarkable is that, despite her hidden life, Therese didn't shy away from life's sufferings. In fact, she welcomed them as opportunities to grow closer to Christ. When she fell ill with tuberculosis, she didn't complain or despair. Instead, she offered her pain to God, uniting it with his suffering on the cross. Even in her final days, she radiated peace and trust, whispering to those around her, "I am not dying. I am entering life." But what is this little way she discovered in the quiet of her convent? And how can it transform the way we live, helping us avoid the ultimate separation from God? As Therese settled into the quiet rhythm of her life in the Carmelite convent, she began to uncover a profound spiritual truth. She looked at the saints and their heroic sacrifices, their martyrdom, their extraordinary acts of faith, and felt a pang of inadequacy. Therese was small, both in stature and in spirit, or so she thought. How could she, this little, ordinary soul, ever reach the heights of holiness? It was in this struggle This yearning to please God despite her limitations, that Therese found her answer. She realized that God didn't desire grand gestures or monumental deeds from her. No, what he wanted was something much simpler: love. Pure, simple, and humble love. And so, she crafted her little way. It wasn't a grand staircase to heaven, but rather an elevator, a way to be lifted into God's arms through small, everyday acts of love. She saw herself as a child, completely dependent on God's mercy, trusting him to do what she could not. Therese's little way teaches us that holiness isn't reserved for the extraordinary. It's found in the ordinary moments of life, when we choose love over selfishness, kindness over anger, and trust over fear. It's in the small sacrifices, a smile to someone who's hurt us, the patient completion of a mundane task, or the quiet offering of our struggles to God. She believed that every moment, no matter how trivial, was an opportunity to show love and grow closer to God. Miss no single opportunity of making some small sacrifice, she said, here by a smiling look, there by a kindly word, always doing the smallest right, and doing it all for love. Imagine this. You're at home, dealing with the frustrations of daily life. Maybe your children are arguing, the house is a mess, and you feel overwhelmed. Instead of losing your temper, you pause, take a deep breath, and offer your patience as a gift to God. In that moment, you are living Therese's little way. It's not easy, but it's powerful, and it draws you closer to the heart of Christ. What's even more beautiful is that Therese's little way isn't just about what we do. It's about how we do it. It's about approaching every action with humility, recognizing our need for God's grace, and trusting in his infinite love. For Therese, even the smallest act, when done with love, had eternal significance. This simple path transformed her own life, filling it with peace and joy even amidst suffering. But it wasn't just for her. She believed it was a path for everyone, ordinary people like you and me. And it's a path that leads not only to holiness, but to paradise on earth, as we begin to see the world through the eyes of love. One of the most remarkable aspects of Saint Therese's life was her ability to find holiness in the simplest of actions. For Therese, sanctity wasn't about grand displays of devotion or dramatic sacrifices. Instead, she believed that even the smallest acts, when done with love, could become a path to God. Imagine her life in the Carmelite convent, a life that, to the outside world, might seem uneventful, even mundane. Her days were filled with routine chores, quiet prayers, and the company of her fellow sisters. Yet for Therese, every task, no matter how small, became an opportunity to glorify God. Whether it was sweeping the floor, folding laundry, or enduring the quirks and annoyances of others, she infused each moment with love. She wrote, "Love proves itself by deeds. So how am I to show my love? Great deeds are forbidden me. The only way I can prove my love is by scattering flowers, and these flowers are every little sacrifice, every glance and word, and the doing of the least actions for love." Therese's approach teaches us something profound. Holiness is not reserved for the extraordinary, but is accessible in the ordinary moments of our lives. Think about the small opportunities you encounter every day. A chance to be patient when someone tests your nerves, to offer a kind word to someone in need, or to complete a difficult task without complaint. These moments may seem insignificant, but when done with love, they are transformed into acts of holiness. Her life also challenges the modern obsession with recognition and achievement. In a world that often measures success by status, wealth, or accomplishments, Therese reminds us that God's measure is different. He doesn't look at the magnitude of our deeds, but at the love behind them. To God, the smallest act of kindness, done with a pure heart, is as precious as the greatest miracle. Therese's simplicity wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a reflection of her profound humility and trust in God. She recognized her limitations and embraced them, trusting that God's grace would fill the gaps. She famously compared herself to a little bird, too small to fly to the heights of heaven on her own, but confident that God would lift her there. Her simplicity also freed her from the fear of failure. She knew that she couldn't rely on her own strength, but on God's infinite mercy. This trust allowed her to face life's challenges with peace and joy, knowing that every small effort made with love was enough in God's eyes. This is the beauty of Therese's little way. It invites us to find God not in extraordinary events, but in the simplicity of everyday life. It reminds us that holiness is not out of reach. It's found in our kitchens, our workplaces, and our relationships. It's found in the quiet sacrifices and acts of love that no one else sees, but that God treasures. But Saint Therese of Lisieux didn't just share spiritual insights. She gave us a roadmap for how to live a life that leads to heaven and avoids the ultimate separation from God. Her little way is filled with practical advice that anyone can apply, no matter their circumstances or state in life. The first piece of advice from Therese is deceptively simple. Embrace the small moments of daily life with love. She understood that our days are filled with opportunities to grow closer to God, even in the most mundane tasks. Washing dishes, folding laundry, working long hours. These are not just chores. They're opportunities to show love and patience, to offer your actions as gifts to God. Therese believed that when we approach these tasks with a spirit of love, they are transformed into acts of holiness. She also taught us to see challenges and irritations as hidden blessings. Therese often endured difficult personalities in her convent. Rather than avoiding them or letting resentment take root, she chose to treat these moments as chances to grow in virtue. For instance, she once sat next to a sister whose habits annoyed her endlessly, from the way she fidgeted to the way she spoke. But instead of succumbing to frustration, Therese prayed for this sister and offered her kindness, turning what could have been a source of bitterness into a path of sanctity. Her advice here is profound. When someone irritates you or tests your patience, resist the urge to react with anger or judgment. Instead, pause, pray for them, and offer that moment to God. This simple act of surrender can change not only your heart, but also the spiritual trajectory of your day. Another cornerstone of Therese's practical wisdom is her insistence on trusting in God's mercy. She recognized that fear of failure or sin often keeps us from drawing near to God. But she reminds us that God's love is not something we earn, it's something we receive. Even when we fall, Therese urges us to turn back to God with confidence, trusting that His mercy is infinite. One way to live this trust is by practicing spiritual surrender. In your moments of doubt, pain, or confusion, follow Therese's example. Bring your worries to God and leave them in His hands. She once wrote, "I desire neither suffering nor death, yet I love both. Whatever He wants, I love." This radical surrender allowed her to find peace, even in the midst of suffering. And it's an invitation for us to do the same, trusting that God will guide us through every trial. Therese also emphasized the importance of small acts of love. A kind word to a stranger, a smile to someone who seems downcast, a prayer for someone in need. These are all ways we can reflect God's love in our daily lives. You don't need to move mountains to please God. You just need to love in the small, hidden ways He places before you. Finally, Therese taught us the value of offering everything to God. From your joys to your sorrows, your successes to your failures, bring it all to Him. She once said, "I will spend my heaven doing good on earth." Imagine the power of that promise, her assurance that even now, she is interceding for us, helping us live her little way. Therese's practical advice reminds us that heaven isn't just a far-off goal. It's something we begin to experience here, on earth, through love, trust, and surrender. For her, hell wasn't about God rejecting us. It was about us rejecting Him. And that rejection begins not with grand, defiant acts, but with the small, daily choices that draw us away from His presence. Imagine turning your back on someone who loves you unconditionally, someone who has given everything for you. That's what separation from God truly is, a self-imposed exile from the source of all love, peace, and joy. Therese understood that this separation is the greatest tragedy a soul can experience, far worse than any physical pain. But here's the good news. God's love is relentless. He doesn't want anyone to experience that separation. In fact, He pursues us with a love so deep and so merciful that He constantly invites us back to Him, even when we've strayed. Therese believed this with all her heart. She trusted in God's desire to save every soul, no matter how lost it seemed. So, how do we avoid this tragic separation from God in our daily lives? Therese's little way offers the answer. It's not about dramatic, heroic acts, but about choosing God in the small moments. Every time we choose kindness over anger, forgiveness over resentment, or prayer over distraction, we take a step closer to Him. Every time we trust in His mercy, even when we feel unworthy, we close the gap that sin tries to create. The beauty of Therese's teachings is that they remind us hell is not inevitable. It's a choice, and so is heaven. Every day, we are invited to choose God's love, to say yes to Him in the little ways that lead us to eternal joy. We've journeyed together through the life and teachings of Saint Therese of Lisieux, uncovering her ultimate revelation, the little way. Her path of love, trust, and simplicity is a reminder that holiness isn't about extraordinary deeds, but about the way we live each ordinary moment. If you found inspiration in today's video, I invite you to subscribe to this channel and join our community of faith. Don't forget to check out our other videos for more stories of saints, reflections on Catholic teachings, and practical ways to grow in holiness. See you in our next video.